Okay, let's try and unpack this. You think you're following all the threads in the Middle East, and then, boom, the map just shifts unexpectedly.
Mm-hmm.
This week, it's really Israel and Yemen grabbing the headlines, a really rapid escalation starting somewhere, well, frankly surprising.
It is fascinating, isn't it, how just one missile attack can almost act like a domino.
Yeah.
It feels like it could set off a whole chain of events, potentially redrawing conflict lines, maybe creating new instability zones.
Absolutely. So for this deep dive, we're going to zero in on that Houthi missile, the one that got dangerously close to Ben Gurion Airport.
And Israel's response, which was immediate and pretty significant, hitting targets in Yemen.
Right. We've sifted through reports from, let's see, Hassan Ben-Youb, the New York Times, Times of Israel, The Guardian, Wikipedia, NPR, Security Council report, basically trying to pull out what you really need to know.
And our mission here, for you listening, is to really understand the sequence of events, the deeper context, what this all means for regional stability, for international law.
And the key takeaways. What should you be thinking about after this?
So maybe we start with that initial strike, May 4th, the missile near Tel Aviv. It's not just what happened, but what it signifies.
Yeah. Hitting that close to a major international airport, that immediately raises the stakes.
Definitely.
So May 4th, 2025, a date that's now marked by this attack near Terminal 3 at Ben Gurion. And we are talking real impact here.
A big crater, yeah. Damage to a road, a vehicle.
And 8 Israelis injured, some actually hurt while they were running for shelter.
And this is maybe the most startling part for many observers. The reported failure of both the U.S. TAGI system and Israel's own aero defense system.
Right. They reportedly failed to intercept it. That's huge.
Huge. The failure of that kind of high-level tech, well, it's significant. They're saying there's an investigation into a, quote, technical issue.
A technical issue. Sounds almost understated. For systems designed to stop exactly this, what does that failure even imply about how invincible people thought these systems were?
That is the question. And the Houthis, well, they didn't waste any time claiming it.
No. Their spokesperson, Yahya Sari, straight up said it was a hypersonic missile. Stealth capabilities, too.
Now, that's a big claim. Hypersonic stealth. It probably needs, independent verification.
Sure. But the disruption it caused, that was absolutely real. Flights suspended for an hour.
And British Airways, Lufthansa, they just canceled services. Pulled out for the time being.
The New York Times piece really framed it well, I thought. They called it a significant security breach.
At one of Israel's most protected sites, Ben Gurion isn't just an airport, it's critical infrastructure, a symbol. An attack getting that close, that resonates deeply.
And the Israeli response followed incredibly fast, swift, and substantial.
The very next day, May 5th, retaliatory airstrikes inside Yemen.
Targeting Hodeidah port specifically, and also a cement factory nearby.
And this wasn't a small operation. Reports mention around 20 Israeli fighter jets involved.
Dropping something like 50 munitions.
The IDF, the Israel Defense Forces, they laid out their justification pretty clearly.
Yeah, they said Hodeidah port was basically a hub, a main route for Iranian weapons getting to the Houthis.
And the cement factory. They claimed it was being used for tunnel construction. Other military purposes, serious claims, framing the response as very targeted.
The Houthis' own TV network, Al Masirah, they confirmed strikes hit multiple locations. They reported at least 21 injuries.
And interestingly, Israeli officials mentioned coordinating with the U.S.
But the operation itself was unilateral, Israel acting alone.
That coordination detail, it is telling, suggests maybe shared intel or at least awareness. But Israel deciding to act independently, that could signal a more, let's say, assertive stance going forward.
Which, yeah, brings us to the bigger picture. This didn't just spring out of nowhere.
No, definitely not. It's clearly tied into the ongoing war in Gaza.
The Houthis have been consistent on this point. They say their actions against Israel are about solidarity with Palestinians, a campaign running since, what, October 7th, 2023?
Right. And we have to keep in mind the staggering human cost of that conflict. I think NPR recently cited over 52,000 deaths in Gaza. Just devastating numbers.
Absolutely devastating. And since that war started, the Houthis, who control a lot of Yemen...
Yeah, they've launched, over 100 attacks, missiles, drones, targeting Israel, but also hitting Red Sea shipping.
Though most of those attacks were intercepted, reportedly.
Correct. Which is why this Ben Gurion strike feels different. It suggests a potential leap, maybe, in their ability to get past defenses. a concerning evolution.
And it does seem like their capabilities might be advancing. Several sources hint at possible Iranian tech support being a factor.
It's a recurring theme, that alleged Iranian backing.
And we should also remember Israel has struck Yemen before, back in 2024.
True. But there seemed to be a shift around March 2025. Israel appeared to be maybe deferring more to the U.S.-led coalition that was already targeting the Houthis.
Yeah, that coalition had launched like over 1,000 strikes, cost the U.S. around $1 billion, according to reports.
But this Ben Gurion attack, it seems to have flipped a switch in Israeli strategy.
You really hear it in the rhetoric. Prime Minister Netanyahu vowing to hit the Houthis and their, quote, Iranian terror masters.
That's a direct linkage. And Defense Minister Katz threatening a seven-fold response. Very strong language. A clear signal of a policy shift.
So what does this mean right now for regional stability? This tit-for-tat escalation feels incredibly precarious.
Extremely. And look at the timing of the Houthi attack. Just hours before Israel's security cabinet was set to vote on expanding Gaza operations.
Right. Was that intentional? A calculated move to disrupt Israeli decision-making?
You have to wonder. It certainly raises the possibility. It adds another layer of complexity.
And then there's Israel's response hitting Hodeidah port. That brings up massive humanitarian concerns.
Huge concerns. That port is absolutely critical. It's a lifeline for aid getting into Yemen.
A country already facing just a catastrophic humanitarian crisis. What is 18 million people need aid?
Something like that. The UN is already warning these strikes could paralyze aid delivery. That means potentially worsening malnutrition, more displacement. It's dire.
Geopolitically, Netanyahu framing the Houthis explicitly as Iranian proxies, that really ramps up the tension with Tehran directly.
And you're already hearing hardliners in Israel talking about striking Iran itself.
Meanwhile, the U.S. is still running its own campaign against the Houthis, but while they're clearly struggling to really curb their resilience, their ability to keep launching attacks.
It's proving very difficult. And like we always see, public opinion is all over the place. Social media just reflects that deep division.
This also throws up some big red flags under international law, doesn't it?
It certainly does. Israel strikes on Hodeidah port, given its vital civilian aid role, that raises questions under international humanitarian law. You know, the law is meant to protect civilians in conflict.
The UN Secretary General called strikes like that especially alarming. That strong wording from the UN.
But it cuts both ways. The Houthi attack targeting civilian infrastructure, like Ben Gurion Airport, that also seems to violate core principles, like distinction telling fighters from civilians and proportionality.
Exactly. So both sides' actions could theoretically be scrutinized by international bodies.
It could be. But let's be realistic. Enforcing international law in such a messy, volatile conflict, it's incredibly challenging.
And another angle, that apparent failure of Israel's advanced defense systems, systems provided partly by allies like the U.S.
Right. Could that make allies rethink military aid? Technology sharing agreements? It might prompt some reassessments.
It's also worth noting the dissent within Israel. The Hostages and Missing Families Forum publicly criticized this escalation.
Yeah, they urged the government. Focus on freeing the hostages still in Gaza. There are, 59 still remaining?
Right. It highlights those really complex, sometimes conflicting pressures inside Israel itself.
Okay, so if we boil this down, just to make sure we're clear on the core facts.
Good idea. Let's recap. May 4th. Houthi missile attack near Ben Gurion. 8 injured, airport disrupted, defense vulnerability exposed.
May 5th. Israeli retaliatory airstrikes. Hodeidah port, a cement factory in Yemen hit. Reports of injuries there. Major humanitarian red flags raised.
Key players, Israel, the Houthis. Indirectly involved or at least implicated, Iran, the U.S.
And looming over it all, serious questions about the legality of targeting civilian infrastructure by both sides under international law.
So if you're asking, okay, why did the Houthis attack Ben Gurion?
Their stated reason is solidarity with Palestinians protesting the Gaza operations.
And why did Israel hit back in Yemen?
Retaliation for Ben Gurion, definitely, plus stated aims of disrupting Houthi capabilities and sending a message to Iran, deterring them.
How does this impact regional stability?
Badly. It significantly ramps up the risk of a wider conflict, sucking in more players, and it makes the humanitarian crisis in Yemen even worse.
And the legality question. Are the airstrikes legal?
Look, there are serious potential violations on both sides. Targeting civilian infrastructure is always problematic under international law.
It really paints a picture of a deeply troubling escalation, doesn't it?
It does. The Houthis showed a concerning new capability, hitting a really high-value target.
And Israel's response, while maybe seen as necessary from their perspective, clearly carries huge humanitarian risks, and those legal questions just add another layer of complexity.
It really just highlights how interconnected everything is in the Middle East. Action here.
It has ripples way over there, threatening to destabilize the whole region.
Precisely.
So this leaves us, and you listening, with a pretty critical question to think about. When you see even the most advanced defense systems apparently fail, and you look at the sheer complexity, the danger of this kind of proxy warfare, what are the long-term implications for security in the region, for how conflicts might play out in the future?
And maybe, considering the immense human cost we've talked about and all the legal knots, what realistic role is there for international diplomacy? Can it actually de-escalate situations like this going forward? What would that even look like?
Something to definitely mull over.